Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Tales of Herding God Part 62 based on novel. So let's start. The black fog grew denser and denser. It was daytime, yet it looked like the night. Qin Mu and the rest could still roughly determine the direction. When they raised their heads up to the sky, they could still see the sun, but the sun wasn't harsh to their eyes. It was like a faint circular halo that was much dimmer than the moonlight. Looking around their surrounding, they could only see the green mountain turning into a hazy black mountain. Noisy voices came from behind as someone shouted, "There are a few that escaped. There are 3 males and 3 females, and also a huge lion. Don't go away, pick up my head. Come back quickly." Qin Mu's heart moved slightly and he looked towards Chen Wanyan. Chen Wanyan understood his intention, and his flying sword flew out of his sheath to dig a long hole in the ground for him to lie down. It was the first time he had met such a weird incident of the dead reviving, therefore, he was slightly at a loss, but now he had already calmed down. Qin Mu waved his sleeves and swept up the earth on both sides, burying Chen Wanyan under the earth. The rest of them continued walking forward, and they didn't move much further when they heard miserable shrieks coming from their back. "Someone hid in the earth to ambush us. My head is severed, does anyone see my head?" "Shut up, idiot. If your head is missing, how are you talking?" "So I see. No wonder I couldn't find it for so long. Which senior brother saw my leg?" "Sorry to trouble you, much thanks." Qin Mu made the dragon Chilean stop, and Chen Wanyan immediately caught up. There shouldn't be any more pursuers. "Let us go quickly." Suddenly, singing voices faintly sounded out from the fog, and these songs were even more peculiar than the song coming from the river surface. These songs had no cadence and sounded very monotonous. Qin Mu made them stop for a moment, while he sneaked over and saw the few singers that were singing. They were a few corpses singing and casting spells, executing soul guide in the dark forest. Their bodies were tattered and they looked very strange, casting spells in the darkness. Dead people casting spells. Qin Mu was slightly stunned. He suddenly thought of the divine art of 9 Spectres sect and felt that they had the flavor of breaking through the boundary of life and death. If this kind of divine art was researched to its limit, could it break the boundary between life and death and achieve eternal life? The divine arts of 9 Spectres sect were far from being called eternal life now. They were only guiding the souls of the dead back from the netherworld, to allow the souls to reside in their own bodies temporarily. They had to continue to execute Soul Guide, and if they stopped executing Soul Guide, their souls might probably be dragged back to the netherworld and they would really die. No wonder those corpses are also executing Soul Guide. Qin Mu thought to himself, they must execute Soul Guide continuously for them to be able to continue moving. These dead men are not weak in cultivation, therefore, it's still best to avoid them. He left these dead people alone and sneaked back. Let us change a direction. They didn't move much further when they met another group of 9 Spectres sect disciples that were casting spells. Other than these 9 Spectres sect disciples that were already dead, he also saw a few disciples of Corpse Immortal cult that were also controlling corpses to surround the soldiers that were escaping from the city. The flying zombies flew by walking on the yellow joss papers beneath their feet. Qin Mu frowned and changed another direction. "Let us head to Deer Mountain." The corpses of 9 Spectres sect were buried there and they slaughtered their way to the county city from there, therefore it must be empty over there. Everyone was extremely nervous, as the people of 9 Spectres sect and Corpse Immortal cult were now everywhere in the black fog. Since Corpse Immortal cult was eradicated by Yu and Chuyu, he reckoned the cult disciples' corpses were also buried nearby, allowing 9 Spectres sect to revive them as well. It was obvious that 9 Spectres sect had come prepared, catching Yu and Chuyu off guard. If this situation went on, Liz Hu would probably be in danger. Qin Mu thought to himself, there must definitely be a ruthless fellow behind the scenes in 9 Spectres sect. For victory, he could even sacrifice the lives of so many disciples of 9 Spectres sect unscrupulously. They came to Deer Mountain, and there was indeed no one here. The black fog had also faded quite a bit. Chen Wanyan, Yun Qiu and the rest gradually put their hearts down. As long as they crossed this mountain, and left the area shrouded by the black fog, they would be temporarily safe. Suddenly, a cadenced chant sounded from the mountain. Everyone's heart turned anxious again, and they looked towards Qin Mu. Qin Mu frowned slightly and whispered, "Something's wrong with his chanting. This isn't soul guide and is another kind of spell." Yu Qinghong and the rest couldn't hear the difference. They didn't know much about Soul Guide of Nine Spectres sect, while Qin Mu had studied this divine art before, thus he could hear some disparity from the chants. "You guys stay here, I'll go and have a look." Qin Mu instructed them and approached the chantings silently. When he came near to the chantings, Qin Mu's footsteps became even softer. On the mountain col in front of him, he could see a sacrificial altar, and there were over 10 male and female Taoists casting spells on the sacrificial altar. That sacrificial altar was constructed by skeletons. The length and width were the same, each being 13 yards long. Meanwhile, on the altar, skulls were used to create a flat surface. With a white banner erected at the four corners, north, south, east, west. Runes written in cinnabar mixed with blood were on the white banners. A sculpture of an 8-armed devil god was erected on the center of the sacrificial altar. This sculpture squatted with one single leg, while the other leg wrapped the previous one around the back of its calf. With the palms of the 8 arms clasped together, the devil god had 4 faces and each face had 3 eyes. These male and female Taoists each executed a talisman treasure, and the talisman treasures floated in the air. The talisman had numerous surfaces, and on each surface was a rune. With these Taoists chant, the runes on the talisman treasures lighted up continuously. The runes that lighted up shone precisely on the body of the devil god's sculpture. Whenever a place got shone on, a rune would light up on the devil god's sculpture. The talisman treasure continuously spun, and lighted up the runes on the sculpture one after another. At this moment, more than half of the runes on this devil god's sculpture had been lighted up. Ghost transferring god dispatching runes command. Qin Mu's heart trembled slightly, the spells of Great Mountain Sect. They are the disciples of Great Mountain Sect, which was already exterminated. These dozen male and female Taoists were all divine arts practitioners, and it looked like that they had already been executing ghost-transferring god-dispatching runes command for quite some time. It was obvious that after Great Mountain Sect was exterminated, they had conspired to strike back, allying themselves with Nine Spectres Sect and Corpse Immortal Cult. Qin Mu then took the time, which Nine Spectres Sect rose up in revolt into consideration, and found it was precisely the time when the scholars of Imperial College were just arriving at Lizhu and Deer County. This meant that there was someone who had clearly kept tabs on the movement of the scholars of Imperial College, and even the time the Imperial scholars would reach here. The scholars of Imperial College coming out for experience were all elites chosen from their own realms. These scholars would become the future officials of Eternal Peace Empire, taking over the current batch of officials that had come from each and every sect. The current officials mostly belonged to the older generation, while the Imperial scholars were the new generation. If this batch of scholars was to be entirely eradicated, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor would lose a pillar of strength in his new generation. This time the scholars coming out for experience was a decree by the Emperor, and those who knew this beforehand would only be the first-ranking high officials who held high authority other than Ji Yulinwan. Qin Mu's gaze flickered. Among the first-ranking powerful ministers, there were definitely people who had betrayed. He very much wanted to continue watching how these disciples of Great Mountain Sect summoned the Devil God, but if he waited until the Devil God was summoned, their deaths would probably be due. Qin Mu sneaked back silently and described what he had seen to Chen Wanyun and the rest. 13 divine arts practitioners and their abilities aren't weak. If they bring out the Devil God, none of us will be able to escape. We'll have to eliminate them before they bring out the Devil God and destroy the sacrificial altar. Who dares to follow me to kill them? Kill divine arts practitioners. Yun Qiu and Yu Qinghong were both astonished, and 13 of them. Qin Mu gave them a glance. You guys don't dare. Yun Qiu muttered, I felt a little afraid. They are divine arts practitioners and furthermore, there are 13 of them. Qin Mu replied solemnly, if we don't kill them, when they bring out the Devil God, not only will we die, the entire Lizhu would be destroyed. Chen Wanyun muttered to himself irresolutely and asked, is Great Mountain Sect a spell sect? Sai Yunxiang tightened the sword case on her back and said, I've heard my elders mentioned before that Great Mountain Sect was a sect that was proficient in cultivating spells related to souls. They aren't as proficient in sword skills or battle techniques. Back then, when Imperial Preceptor exterminated Great Mountain Sect, he brought a team of divine arts practitioners that cultivated sword skill to attack Great Mountain, exterminating this sect. After Great Mountain Sect got exterminated, their disciples that were scattered outside might not learn the traditional spells and won't have many attainments in their battle techniques and sword skills. Qin Mu said, Imperial Preceptor used sword skills to kill them, but we won't use sword skills, we'll use battle techniques. If we use sword skills, we won't win their spells. But in close combat, before they could even execute their spells, they would be slain by us. Wanyun, Yun Qiu, Qinghong, I've seen your battle techniques before and they aren't weak. Do you have the guts to face them? Chen Wanyun replied solemnly, You dare, I dare. Qin Mu looked at Sai Yunxiang, and Sai Yunxiang lowered her head while saying, Yunxiang will take Imperial Academician as my only guide. Qin Mu then looked at Yu Qinghong and her eyes were sparkling as she found it hard to suppress her excitement. I had never come to grips with such a situation before, how can I not participate? Wolf Slave, get ready as well. Qin Mu's gaze fell on Monk Yun Qiu, and he hesitated for a moment before gritting his teeth. If I don't enter hell, who would? I'm in. Qin Mu said. I will be the first to rush out later and slaughter my way up to the sacrificial altar to pave the way for you guys. You guys will follow behind me and fight in close combat. We'll have to fight as quick as possible and cannot drag the battle out. The sacrificial is only 13 by 13 yards, with such cramped space. You guys will have to think what move you want to use and go through it several times in your mind. Yu Qinghong was so excited both her hands were trembling as she smiled. Following you isn't so bad after all. The first battle is already so exciting, I already can't wait. Qin Mu stooped down and moved forward. Chen Wanyan and the rest followed him and came to the mountain kernel. They could see that the runes on the body of Devil God's sculpture were almost all lit up. The 13 female and male Taoists were still executing their talisman as they continued walking around the sacrificial altar. The chants came out continuously from their mouth, as if it was an ancient sacrificial language. Qin Mu's heart jumped and he suppressed his urge to immediately rush out and break the sacrificial ritual. He instructed softly, observe the terrain and after you guys are done, we'll make our move. Linga, bring the dragon Chileen to the other side and make some sounds to attract their attention. Hu Linga immediately brought the dragon Chileen to take a detour around the sacrificial altar and went towards the right. After a moment, Yu Qinghong said softly, we are done observing. Qin Mu waved his hand and Hu Linga immediately jumped out from the underbrush while the dragon Chileen roared behind her and gave chase, as if he was hunting. The 13 Taoists on the sacrificial altar were astonished, but when they saw the fox and the dragon Chileen, a Daoist smiled. So it was a huge lion catching its prey. Before he could even finish his words, he saw a knife light flashed by. Qin Mu had already arrived at the sacrificial altar with each hand wielding a knife. The human head rolled down as he raised his hand. Battle technique, every cloud has a silver lining. On this sacrificial altar that knot was very large, a vertical and a horizontal knife light shone. The horizontal knife light beheaded that Daoist while the vertical knife light sliced down from the head of another female Daoist. That female Daoist was a divine arts practitioner of 6 directions realm, and even though she had never cultivated battle techniques before, she had a golden chain hanging around her forehead, and in the middle of this chain was a jewel. Light burst forth from this jewel and blocked this knife from Qin Mu. Qin Mu dragged his knife and the female Daoist's forehead bled. Her vital qi immediately burst forth, and the horsetail whisk in her other hand bloomed like a flower that had countless petals. The thousands of threads from the horsetail whisk stabbed towards Qin Mu. Her attacks, just unleashed, and she saw countless of sword light overwhelming her. Midnight battle across stormy cities. Qin Mu's footsteps moved and he avoided the horsetail whisk that was stabbing towards him and went behind the female Daoist's corpse, which had not collapsed to the ground yet. Behind that female Daoist's corpse, there was a Daoist behind her. That Daoist had already returned to his senses, and yellow joss papers flew out from the pouch on his waist. However, at this moment, Qin Mu threw away his knives and jabbed with his fingers, putting together. The vital qi at his fingertips turned into incomparably sharp sword light, and penetrated through the heart of that Daoist's brows. Behind Qin Mu, a dragon and an elephant rose into the sky. The dragon coiled around Yun Qiu as he stepped on the elephant and slaughtered towards a female Daoist. A loud boom sounded out as he smashed the female Daoist onto the sculpture of the devil god. That female Daoist spat out blood and her vital qi burst forth, reflecting him away. She was about to kill him when a sword light flashed by and smeared her throat, giving off a soft clink sound. This female Daoist's vital qi was so dense that she actually used her vital qi to block this sword. However, in the next moment, Chen Wanyan appeared beside her and grabbed the sword's hilt. With all his strength, he actually pushed her onto the devil god's sculpture, and pulled out his sword forcefully, bursting forth with blood light. Wolf Slave's body flashed, and he leaped onto the head of the sculpture. With two of his devil knives appearing and disappearing unpredictably, he hacked downwards. Meanwhile, Yu Qinghong stood on the shoulders of Wolf Slave and sharp swords flew out from the sword case on her back, turning into drill sword form, as she stabbed towards a Daoist below. That Daoist grabbed a white banner stabbed on the altar, and held the banner in a reverse grip. The white banner trembled and the runes on the banner lighted up, and swam out like weird red snakes to block the two devil knives. Meanwhile, Yu Qinghong's drill sword form drilled through the banner, and tunneled into the heart of his brows. At the same time, Sai Yinxiang flashed past like a phantom, and gave repeated blows with a kind of strange mudra, vibrating another female Daoist to death, shattering all her bones. Chen Wanyan's heart leaped when he saw this. Junior sister Sai hid her abilities well, her cultivation is extremely powerful. He leaped towards another Daoist, and the Daoist suddenly jumped down from the altar to run away. Behind him, the yellow joss paper flew towards the sacrificial altar. Chen Wanyan immediately gave chase, but the yellow joss papers exploded one after another, blowing him away ruthlessly. At the other side, Yun Qiu moved to block that Daoist, executing Great Five platform mudra to block that Daoist's way. That Daoist sneered and splayed out his 5 fingers. Thunder burst forth from the heart of his palm, and shook Yun Qiu's soul. That Daoist put his mind at rest and shouted sternly, "A bunch of younger generation, that hasn't even cultivated to 6 fusion realm actually." Just as he said that, he felt a chill from the back of his heart, and he lowered his head to see a sword piercing through his chest. He had totally no idea when that person behind him had closed in on him. Qin Mu pulled out his sword and the person croaked, "Great body technique." When he finished saying that, he collapsed to the ground and stopped breathing. Qin Mu returned his sword into the sheath, and on the altar, Yu Qinghong, Wolf Slave, and Sai Yinxiang were still killing the other Daoist. They circled the altar and saw corpses surrounding the devil god's sculpture. Some Daoists were not collapsed on the floor, and were nailed to the devil god's sculpture. Some of the Daoists were hung on the white banner, and some were turned into a pile of mush. Some of their heads were smashed by an iron hammer, and they all died differently. The 3 of them were shaken, and Sai Yinxiang inspected the corpses with a grave expression. These corpses had all suffered Qin Mu's ruthless attack in an instant and died before they could even unleash their divine arts. They all basically died from just one move, she thought to herself secretly, and raised her eyes to look at Qin Mu. 13 divine arts practitioners, even though their battle techniques weren't strong, divine arts practitioners were divine arts practitioners after all. Even though everyone said that it was sure death if a strong practitioner of the spell school was to be closed in by strong practitioners of the battle technique school, those were only casual talk. If there was a difference in realm, battle techniques might not be able to break through the opponent's defensive divine arts. Even though they had caught the enemies unprepared, Qin Mu's battle prowess was way too strong, his speed was also way too fast. Qin Mu trembled his junior protector sword and shook off the blood on his sword. Returning the sword into his sheath, he said, "Clean the battlefield and immediately destroy the devil god's sculpture." Just as he had said that, a loud boom suddenly came from not far away. Blood light shone among the black fog, dyeing the pitch-black fog blood red. That blood light was over 300 yards high, and they could even see it clearly while standing at the mountain col. A terrifying power came surging from another world and pounded at where the blood light had burst forth from. Following that, rumblings of thunder sounded out as bolts of lightning struck around the surroundings of the blood light. That was the bolts of lightning compressed out from the space by the terrifying power. If the power was too strong, the vibrating force would compress the space and cause the space to become unstable. When space became unstable, the lightning hidden in the space would burst forth. Everyone's expression turned into a daze, as they saw an incomparably huge body gradually standing up at where the blood light and bolts of lightning were gathering at. That was a devil god with horns on his head, and had 4 arms and 4 legs. Even though it was only a sculpture, towering flames overflowed from his body as if a devil god had descended into this world. This devil god that had descended was even taller than this deer mountain, and with smoke billowing out from its body, there were flames and rays of lightning mixed with the smoke. Meanwhile, the blood light soared into the sky and hung above his head. There was another place where the Great Mountain sect was summoning another devil. Qin Mu's limbs turned icy cold. On the other side, the divine arts practitioners of Great Mountain sect had succeeded in casting their spell and summoned the devil god over. The gaze of that imposing devil god was like bolts of lightning interweaving each other. Wherever the gaze swept by, all the trees and rocks would be completely reduced to ashes with a fizzle. Qin Mu let out a murky breath, and said in a low voice, "Strip." Everyone was slightly stunned and Monk Yun Q muttered, "I have to undress again." Sai Yunxiang understood what he meant and immediately undressed the clothes from the corpse on the ground. The other people also immediately understood Qin Mu's meaning and hurriedly took off the clothes of Great Mountain sect's divine arts practitioners. Qin Mu also wore the clothes of the Great Mountain sect's disciple, while instructing with a low voice, "Pluck out those white banners, and pick up the talisman treasures as backup." Chen Wanyan and the rest went forward to pluck out the white banner, and pick up the talisman treasure. When they were all ready, they saw the devil god blustering towards the river surface, tremoring the huge waves of surging river into the sky. Everyone's expression changed hugely and the dragon Qilin had also rushed over. Qin Mu said quickly, "We need to move away from here immediately, this place is no longer for us, scholars of 5 elements realm, to have a footing. Are there any items on you that could represent you as an imperial scholar? Hand them all to me." Yun Q took out his pass and book tablet while muttering, "Are we really going to send ourselves to death going to the southern border?" Qin Mu kept everyone's passes and book tablets into his Taotier's sack and said, "We are going to take a detour from the southern border. After we make it through this battlefield, we'll just have to cross the river, and we'll be safe once we reach the north of the river." He let out a murky breath, and was about to order them to move off, when he took a glance at the devil god's sculpture, which was yet completed. His heart wavered and he carried this sculpture up, tying it on the dragon Qilin's back. "Let's go, to the south." Everyone was in a heavy mood as they followed him and headed toward the south along the foothills. After about 3 to 4 miles, they had finally walked out of the area shrouded by the black fog. Walking another 3 to 4 miles ahead, Qin Mu turned his head back and saw the black fog was like an incomparably huge black wak, which was covered on the surroundings of surging river, detaining both sides of the shores. In the middle of the black fog was an enormous gate which opened access between life and death, connecting to the gate in the netherworld. "I wonder how many people would survive in Lizhu," Qin Mu thought to himself. Not long after, Qin Mu suddenly stopped, "The army is here." Yun Q was delighted, "Army? Our eternal peace's army." Qin Mu shook his head and pointed forward, "The rebel army." Everyone looked forward and there were dozens of ships flying towards them. The Ganfanans were brandished on the ships and around each, and every ship was strange beasts that were flying in the sky. There were strange beasts of shapes and sizes, having a numerous number of species. Meanwhile, below the army in the sky, there were rows of soldiers that were made up by martial arts practitioners and divine arts practitioners. Among the soldiers, there were huge beasts that were strapped full with huge circular rocks. These beasts were dozens of yards tall and was like moving mountains. With every step they took, the ground trembled endlessly. Qin Mu and the rest stood at one side and let this huge army that was heading towards the battlefield at Surging River to pass. A general standing on one of the ships shot his lightning-like gaze over and swept Qin Mu and the rest before inquiring the officer beside him, "Who are those people?" The officer beside him gave Qin Mu and the rest a few glances and said, "They seem to be disciples of Great Mountain Sect. I'll head down to ask them." This general leaped down from the ship, and every time his feet landed, there would be a golden lotus blooming under his feet. With a lotus blooming with each footstep, he walked over to Qin Mu and the rest step by step, making everyone felt fear and trepidation in the face of disaster. This was a great expert of 7 stars realm which could step on the void. If he wanted to kill them, it was as easy as blowing away a speck of dust. That officer saw the devil god sculpture on the dragon Chilean's back and asked coldly, "Disciples of Great Mountain Sect, running without a fight, how should you be punished?" Qin Mu bowed and replied in a neither servile nor overbearing tone, "Our Great Mountain Sect has tried our best. We have already summoned out a devil god to assist in the battle. Not only are we not guilty, we've done a meritorious deed instead." That officer gave a cold snort. "However, you've escaped from the battle. This is a crime punishable by death, to be beheaded on the spot." Qin Mu had an expression of grief and indignation, as he protested, "We suffered from the sneak attack of Liz Hu, and among my 13 brothers and sisters, 7 of them had died in battle. Only the 6 of us are left. When we are putting our lives on the line, where are your people? Our Great Mountain Sect has already been exterminated, and only we're left. Do you really want all of us to die there? General, leave some seeds for our Great Mountain Sect." That general hesitated and raised his head to look up. On the ship in the sky, that general said solemnly, "There are already very little people in Great Mountain Sect, so there's no need to delve into this. They had already done a great deed by summoning one devil god out to assist in the battle. Let them execute their spells to affirm their identity before letting them go." Chen Wanyan, Yun Qiu and the rest broke out in cold sweat. They had never cultivated before the spells of Great Mountain Sect. Qin Mu executed a talisman treasure, and the general's voice came sounding out, "Not a talisman treasure, spells." Qin Mu's vital qi circulated, and his vital qi turned into a rune, which shone onto the body of the devil god sculpture, lighting up a rune on the devil god sculpture. That general bowed and said, "General Xiaoyi, this is indeed ghost transferring god dispatching runes command of Great Mountain Sect." General Xiaoyi on the ship waved his hand, "Let them go, move the army and attack Liz Hu." "Halt." General Xiaoyi's gaze landed on Qin Mu and the rest, a smile curled up on his lips. "Send them to Heavenwave City, and let them summon a devil god there as well." Heavenwave City. Qin Mu and the rest had a slight change in expression. They felt they had just escaped from the wolf pack and into the tiger's den. General Xiaoyi smiled. "Great Mountain Sect's ghost transferring god dispatching runes command is indeed powerful. Heavenwave City is also attacking the opposite shore, therefore if there's a devil god assisting them, there would be much lesser casualties in Heavenwave City. Lin Ding, you'll follow them." That officer immediately acknowledged. General Xiaoyi waved his hand and let the army be on their way. Qin Mu and the rest bowed, and when the army had passed by, that officer Lin Ding smiled, "Junior brothers, let us head for Heavenwave City." Qin Mu's expression remained unchanged and said, "Please, Officer Lin." Lin Ding smiled, "Your Great Mountain Sect has done a meritorious deed, and even though there are only a few of you left, you could still summon Devil God forward to assist us in battle. You guys will definitely re-establish your sect and shine. Even though you are still quite young, I admire this kind of miraculous ability." Qin Mu laughed out loud with a face full of glory. "We're indebted to Officer's lucky words." "That's right, Officer. I see you're not that old yet, your cultivation is high. May I dare to ask what is Officer's realm now?" "Peak of 7 stars realm, however, it's always hard to advance to celestial being realm." Lin Ding sighed ruefully. "Celestial being is hard, and now that the world is in turmoil, we will have to enforce justice on behalf of heaven, to clean up the laws and discipline of the Imperial Court, to get rid of Imperial Preceptor, that renegade. This is a chance, and I might just be able to take this chance to have a breakthrough. You guys might be young, but you must grasp this chance as well." He saw everyone looking somewhat puzzled and said solemnly, "Since ancient times, heroes are born from the battlefield. The more chaotic the world becomes, the easier it is to improve. Why is that so?" This is because when the strong practitioners clash, their philosophies collide and all kinds of divine arts, paths and skills would emerge, broadening one's horizons, raising their knowledge and experience. The pressure from strong practitioners, pressure from life and death, would push ourselves forward with acute determination, continuing to improve. For example, the ghost transferring God dispatching runes command of your great mountain sect, who would execute this kind of spell in times of peace. The more chaotic it gets, the more chances they would be able to be executed, only then would one improve. Chen Wanyan and the rest felt that his words were very logical. This time, ghost transferring God dispatching runes command, this kind of neglected spells had really broadened their horizons. After Great Mountain sect was exterminated, their remnant disciples could actually still summon a devil god to assist in battle. How astonishing was the battle prowess of that devil god! A mere unremarkable spell could actually give forth to such an astonishing power, truly shaking them. In addition to that, Soul Guide was also an unremarkable spell which didn't have much power. When they saw this kind of spell in floor of heavenly records, they would usually throw them aside and not further study them. And the rest. In terms of the power of spells, there were thousands of spells in floor of heavenly records that would surpass these two unremarkable spells. However, it was a low-level spell like Soul Guide that had changed the situation of the entire war just like that, causing a border commander like Yu Yuan Chuyu to suffer a huge setback, making it difficult to protect Liz Hu. Soul Guide and Ghost Transferring God Dispatching Runes command absolutely had no power, but by using these spells at the right situation, the power this kind of neglected spells could unleash would far surpass the power of a magnificent army with thousands of men and horses. This officer Lin Ding may be the opposing force, but his experience surpassed them. This also stressed them. Since Officer Lin Ding's experience and strength much higher than theirs, if he discovered any tiny hints, they would probably die miserably. Furthermore, even if Officer Lin Ding couldn't find any flaw with them, they would still die if they couldn't summon the Devil God when they reached Heavenwave City. Even if they summoned the Devil God, which would massacre the army of eternal peace, they would still have to die when they returned to the capital city. No matter how they looked at it, it was a sure death ending. If we could attack him mercilessly altogether, will we be able to get rid of this great expert? Qin Mu calculated secretly and felt his victory was uncertain. Unless he could make the Dragon Chilean make a move, however, with the Dragon Chilean's temperament of always resigning himself to adversity, it would probably be hard to make him put his life on the line. We can get rid of 13 divine arts practitioners, so why can't we deal with an expert of 7 stars realm? Qin Mu's gaze wavered. They walked several miles forward and they suddenly heard yells coming over. A band of bandits came slaughtering over, and these bandits weren't weak at all. The head of the bandits was a divine arts practitioners, while the others were martial arts practitioners. Everyone was lusting to kill when Officer Lin Ding smiled. Don't worry. They are merely some vermins, let them come. Those bandits slaughtered over, and Officer Lin Ding only raised a hand and unleashed a mudra. With the thunder in palm bursting forth, a loud boom sounded out with a flash of white light, exploding the bodies of the dozens of bandits. Even the divine arts practitioner also exploded on the spot and died. Thunder in palm of the battle technique school. Qin Mu's heart leaped and instantly felt a thorny problem in his hand. Against strong practitioners of battle technique school, sneak attack was completely useless. They were all martial arts practitioners of 5 elements realm, therefore if they jumped on him, they would at most be scratching Officer Lin Ding's back and wouldn't be able to hurt him. With anxiousness in their hearts, they could only follow Officer Lin Ding towards Heavenwave City. Qin Mu asked, General Lin Ding, may I ask what's the background of General Xiaoyi? Officer Lin Ding revealed an expression of admiration and said, General Xiaoyi is the Crown Prince of Justice Exist Country, and after Justice Exist Country was annexed, the Emperor was conferred as king with a different surname, while General Xiaoyi was conferred as Prince Xiaoyi. Now that Imperial Preceptor is throwing the skills in this world into disorder, this is for the path of the devil. This is a chance for General Xiaoyi, and he might just be able to rebuild his empire. Heavenwave City is right ahead. In front of them, there was an unbroken chain of mountain peak beside the shore of surging river. The mountains forced surging river to go around them, and Heavenwave City was building on the mountains that cut into surging river. Below was sheer cliffs and precipitous rock faces, which caused surging river to become more urgent here. Whenever the towering waves slapped onto the cliffs, they would give off world-shaking bangs. The waves which were shattered then rose high into the sky, as if there were countless of white jade pearls falling from the white clouds in the sky. Waves slapping the clouds right up to heaven, this was how Heavenwave City came about. At this moment, there were soldiers of the rebel army everywhere in Heavenwave City, which were looking at the army of Eternal Peace Empire across the river, holding on to their weapons and waiting for the time to make their move. Officer Lin Ding brought them to Heavenwave City and said, "The person guarding this place is an existence of the cult master level, the Dragon King of Dragon Rider sect. You must have heard him before, right? Even though the ability of the Dragon King isn't that high, he had raised a flood dragon, and this flood dragon is powerful. It can kill strong practitioners of life and death realm without a problem. That's the son of the Dragon King in front, Long Jianan." The general keeping watch was a pretty and flirtatious male wearing a brightly colored gown. There was heavy makeup on his face and looked very provoking to the eyes. It was the young sect master of Dragon Rider sect, Long Jianan. Officer Lin Ding brought Qin Mu forward to make some inquiries. Long Jianan exchanged greeting with him and was slightly stunned when he suddenly saw Qin Mu. "This person looks familiar." Qin Mu felt alarmed in his heart and lowered his head to greet. When he entered the capital city for the first time, he had taken the ship that was heading towards the capital city with Wei Yong from River Tomb. Long Jianan had controlled a huge snake to fly in mid-air and killed everyone on the ship, leaving only him and Wei Yong escaping for their lives. In the hurry, Long Jianan may have seen his face before. These few are the disciples of Great Mountain Sect. Officer Lin Ding introduced. They summoned a devil god in Deer County, thus General Xiaoyi had wanted them to cast their spells here in Heavenwave City, to summon a devil god to assist us in the battle. Long Jianan couldn't remember where he had met Qin Mu before, but her eyes lit up and she chuckled. "Summoning the devil god. Well, this is interesting. What magical artifact do you guys need? I'll prepare them for you." Qin Mu immediately said, "We only need a white bone sacrificial altar that's 13 by 13 yards wide. It would have to be constructed using bones, and the platform of the altar would have to be laid out with skulls. The eye sockets of the skulls must be facing upwards and cannot be sloppy." "How troublesome." Long Jianan smiled. "In times of chaos, corpses are plentiful. Wait a moment, I'll order people to prepare the sacrificial altar. If the bones aren't enough, we'll kill some people to make up for it. The lives of Heavenwave City's people are worthless." Qin Mu said, "We are executing a secret art, so we can't be disturbed, therefore could General Long." Long Jianan gave him coquettish glances, and Qin Mu felt goosebumps popping up. Long Jianan smiled. "I understand, you can be at ease. I'll station the soldiers outside of the sacrificial altar. However, if you can't summon the devil god and make a fool out of me, I'll be sure to violate you thoroughly." Chen Wanyun, Yun Qiu and Wolf Slave felt their hairs standing on ends. On the other hand, Sai Yunxiang and Yu Qinghong still felt normal. Not long after, Long Jianan had already ordered his subordinates to build a white bone sacrificial altar in Heavenwave City. This altar was situated in the city lord's manor. Long Jianan dismissed the soldiers and made them station outside, so they couldn't observe Qin Mu and the rest casting their spells. Qin Mu looked around and saw over 100 soldiers stationed outside, and it was pretty impossible for them to leave. "What should we do?" On the sacrificial altar, everyone looked at Qin Mu. Chen Wanyan said with a low voice, "We're now deep in the enemy's territory, Senior Uncle Qin, you'll make the call." He finally changed and called Qin Mu Senior Uncle. Even though Yun Qiu and Yu Qinghong were bewildered, they didn't probe. Qin Mu said solemnly, "Of course we cast spells to summon the devil, inviting the devil god over." Yun Qiu jumped in shock and cried out, "We have not learned the spells of Great Mountain Sect before. How do we summon the devil god?" "I've learned before." Qin Mu carried the devil god's sculpture over and placed it on the sacrificial altar. He then stabbed the white banner at the four corners and said, "I'll be the one summoning and dispatch this devil god over." Great Mountain Sect requires 13 people to execute this spell, but I feel I can do it alone as well, although it would be slightly troublesome. Yun Q said with hesitation, our whole family would be hung if we summon a devil god to massacre Eternal Peace Empire's army. Don't worry, there should definitely be some trick to summon the devil god. They won't let the devil god go on a rampage, otherwise the people summoning the devil god would have died as well. Qin Mu's gaze wavered and he spat out a murky breath. If we summon the devil god over and make him attack Heavenwave City, I think we can escape while chaos ensues. You guys guard the surroundings and be careful of any movements, I'll cast the spell. Everyone immediately stood guard around the sacrificial altar. Qin Mu took out the talisman treasure, and took a look at the runes on the 1024 surfaces, memorizing them by heart. He then looked at the runes on the devil god sculpture, comparing them one by one before muttering to himself irresolutely, and beginning to cast the spell. His vital chi burst forth, and his vital chi threads raised the 13 talisman treasures up in mid-air, surrounding the devil god sculpture. An obscure and ancient language sounded out from his nasal cavity, and his oral cavity, as his vital chi started to push the talisman treasures to transform, lighting up the runes on the talisman treasures one after another. The runes then shone onto the devil god sculpture, lighting up the runes that were imprinted around the sculpture of the devil god. Chen Wanyan and the rest were bewildered. The language coming out from Qin Mu's mouth was not the language they normally spoke. It was slightly similar to the language Great Mountain Sect gave off when they were summoning the devil, but it seemed to be even more profound. It's the devil language, Cai Yunxiang said in a low voice. The runes of this devil god's sculpture lit up one by one. Controlling 13 talisman treasures required one to memorize over 1,000 runes and their arrangement. Even though Qin Mu had not yet mastered computational canon of supreme mystery, the memory had already improved by leaps and bounds, thus he could control them calmly. An hour later, more than half of the runes on this devil god's sculpture had already been lighted up by him. At the same time, when he was chanting devil language, he felt that he had gradually made a connection with a being from another dark world in the depths of space and time through this sculpture. And at this moment, over 10 Taoists brought another devil god sculpture and hurried to Heavenwave City. When Officer Lin Ding saw these Taoists, he immediately welcomed them with a smile. You guys from Great Mountain Sect had come just right. Your junior brothers and junior sisters are currently summoning the devil in the city. It's been quite some time. This video will end here.